How are you guys doing? Today is Tuesday, December 22nd, 2020, out here in this quarantine. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, following last night's Monday night matchup between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cincinnati Bengals, I will keep you all updated with a Week 16 playoff picture as we approach the last 2 weeks of the season, and just to show you how the AFC and NFC shape up, and just to see which teams are still in contention for the last couple spots in this expanded playoffs. And I'm just going to start once again like I did with the last couple weeks, starting with the AFC. Starting from the top of the AFC playoff picture, the team that's currently leading at the top of their division are in the top of the conference, or the Kansas City Chiefs, who are sitting at 13-1. They are currently leading the AFC West, following their win against the New Orleans Saints. A very big win for them. And this week they will face off against the Atlanta Falcons at home. The Falcons are 4-10, and looking at currently where the Chiefs sit, because they are 2 games ahead of the Buffalo Bills, of course, a win against the Atlanta Falcons can secure the AFC for them and can secure a first round bye, which would grant them another week of rest in Week 17 moving forward. Currently sitting second in the AFC, you'll have the 11-3 Buffalo Bills, who just passed up the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're currently sitting 11-3, first in the AFC East. They have officially won their division, but they are 2 games ahead of the Miami Dolphins. Still a lot going on there for the Buffalo Bills, coming off of their win against the Denver Broncos. This week, the Buffalo Bills are slated to play against the New England Patriots on Monday night, their division rivals, and a win here could see them move a little bit further up in the AFC, considering they have the same record as the Steelers, and considering they have the tiebreaker. If they win out, they can secure a better record over the Steelers moving forward. Speaking of the Steelers, after starting out 11-0 and initially having the top spot in the playoff pictures, they have now dropped down to the third best record in the AFC, following their loss to the Cincinnati Bengals. They are currently on a 3-game losing streak, and this week the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to face off against the Indianapolis Colts at home. The Indianapolis Colts are still fighting for a playoff spot, and looking where the Steelers are sitting, they are 1 game ahead of fourth place, but they have already clinched the playoffs. So the Pittsburgh Steelers are still trying to compete just for playoff positioning at just moving forward, as they're sitting 11-3 with 2 games left in the season. Currently sitting in the 4th spot, you have the Tennessee Titans following their matchup against the Lions. They currently have the same record as the Indianapolis Colts, but since they own the tiebreaker, they currently hold the division title in their hands if they are able to possibly win out. This week, the Tennessee Titans are slated to play against the Green Bay Packers in Green Bay on Sunday night on NBC. The Green Bay Packers are also fighting for a playoff spot, but the Tennessee Titans, a very big win could prove very important for them, as they are still fighting to clinch the playoffs thus far. But yeah, because the AFC is so close, it's very important for Tennessee to grab onto this win, especially because the Indianapolis Colts hold on to the same record. And that's where the Titans sit at number 4. And sitting at number 5, also with a 10-4 record, you have the Cleveland Browns that are still fighting for a playoff spot. Following their win against the New York Giants, the Cleveland Browns are going to play against the New York Jets this week, and the Jets were able to beat the Los Angeles Rams, a team that's currently in the playoff picture. So, of course, the Jets are not a team to be taken lightly. Cleveland, like I said, they're sitting at 10-4. They are still trying to clinch a playoff spot, and they're only 1 game behind the Steelers. And the way the Steelers have been trending lately, it looks as though it's very possible for the Cleveland Browns to overtake the Steelers within the AFC North. So a win could prove very important for them, and because they are playing the Jets, this could be seen as a gimme game for the Cleveland Browns to jump up a little bit in their division with 2 games left to play. And because they're sitting at the top of the wild card, a win here could see them play against probably one of the weaker division winners in the playoffs right now. As it sits, if the playoffs were to start today, the Browns would be slated to play against the Tennessee Titans. That's where they sit. And also sitting at 10-4 in the 6th seed, you have the Indianapolis Colts, who have the same record as the Tennessee Titans, but the Titans hold the tiebreaker. Following their game against the Houston Texans, the Indianapolis Colts are slated to play against the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh. And considering how the Steelers have been playing, I could see the Indianapolis Colts I could see them very possibly winning this game and still challenging Tennessee for the AFC South title moving forward. But this would be a very important game for the Colts moving forward, considering they still have yet to clinch the playoffs. They're still one game ahead of the Baltimore Ravens, who are sitting on the outside looking in, as of course the Indianapolis Colts. A win here could prove very important to them, and they could clinch the playoffs this next week, but we still need to see how that goes. Right now in the AFC, sitting in that last spot in the AFC, because if the playoffs were to start today, the Colts would be slated to play against the Steelers in the first round. The Miami Dolphins are currently sitting at 9-5 with the same record as the Baltimore Ravens, who are currently sitting outside the wild card. So the Miami Dolphins basically have to win. And coming off of their last matchup against the New England Patriots, the Dolphins are slated to play against the Las Vegas Raiders in Las Vegas on Saturday at 8:15. So this will be a very important game for them, considering the Raiders are also fighting for a playoff spot. Because they have the same record as the Ravens, the Miami Dolphins basically have to win this game if they want to keep this playoff spot. Ever since Tua Tagovailoa has taken over, the Miami Dolphins haven't shown that they haven't really shown many weaknesses, especially with how strong their secondary has been. So and with Miami right now sitting in that 7th spot, if the playoffs were to start right now, they'd be slated to play against the Buffalo Bills, their division rivals. So the Miami Dolphins are once again one of the teams that are pretty much fighting for their lives, especially in these playoffs. And currently on the bubble, the first team on the outside looking in from the AFC are the 9-5 Baltimore Ravens, currently sitting 3rd in the AFC North. They have the same record as the Miami Dolphins, so a loss for the Miami Dolphins in Las Vegas can see the Baltimore Ravens jump back up. And following their win against the Jaguars, the Baltimore Ravens are going to play against the New York Giants at home. The Giants are also fighting for a playoff spot, so the Ravens are going to get the Giants' bests, as the Ravens still, with 2 games left, is still very possible. It's very mathematically possible for the Ravens to make it in. But as of right now, moving forward, they have to beat the team right in front of them right now, and that team is currently the New York Giants, if they want to at least give themselves a fighting chance to make it into the playoffs. And then the last team that's currently in the playoff hunt in the AFC are the Las Vegas Raiders, who are currently sitting at 7-7. They are second in the AFC West. They are 2 games behind both the Dolphins and the Ravens, and I guess if both teams lose out, the Las Vegas Raiders are still mathematically able to clinch the playoffs. Following their last matchup against the Chargers, the Raiders are going to face off against a playoff team. They're facing off against the Dolphins, who, like I just said, are fighting for that very last spot in the playoff picture. They are holding on to it, and because they need to win out, a win could prove very important for the Las Vegas Raiders moving forward. Continuing to look through the AFC, as it currently stands, the New England Patriots, the Los Angeles Chargers, the Denver Broncos, the Houston Texans, the Cincinnati Bengals, the New York Jets, and the Jacksonville Jaguars are all eliminated. With the 7 teams as standing, the Chiefs, Bills, Steelers, Titans, Browns, Colts, and Dolphins are the teams that are sitting in, as the only 2 teams that are on the outside looking in with 2 weeks left are the Baltimore Ravens at 9-5 and the Las Vegas Raiders at 7-7. Now that's the AFC. Jumping to the NFC, starting from the top of the conference. The team currently sitting at the top with the best chance of clinching the first round bye are the Green Bay Packers. And following their win against the Carolina Panthers, the Green Bay Packers are slated to play against the Tennessee Titans at home on Sunday night. The Titans are fighting for a playoff spot, and looking at where the Packers are situated, they're 11-3. They are 1 game ahead of the New Orleans Saints and the Seattle Seahawks, with 2 games left. So a win here could see them a win here at a Saints and Seahawks loss could see the Packers clinch the top spot in a possible first round playoff bye. And just like I'm saying, they still have to put up an incredible fight, because they are playing against a playoff team. So moving forward, this is a very important game if they do seek to win, and if they do, they could definitely spoil the Tennessee Titans season moving forward. The second spot in the NFC as it sits are the New Orleans Saints, who just got Drew Brees back. Right now they're sitting at 10-4 following their loss to the Kansas City Chiefs. But right now, like I said, they're still sitting second in the division, and as it stands right now, they would face off against the 7th seed, the Arizona Cardinals, if the playoffs were to start today. The next matchup for the New Orleans Saints this week will be against the Minnesota Vikings on Friday as they play on Christmas. For Christmas, they could see themselves possibly move up in the playoff picture. A win could prove very important for the New Orleans Saints, as they do have the same record as the Seattle Seahawks, who are sitting in that 3rd spot. So the Saints, if they want to hold on to that spot, they got to win against the Minnesota Vikings here. The 3rd spot in the NFC belongs to the Seattle Seahawks, who have most recently clinched the playoffs following their win against the Washington football team. A very important win, especially moving forward. And looking at to who the Seahawks are going to play this week, the Seahawks are going to face off. They're going to face off against the Los Angeles Rams, sitting at 9-5 following their loss to the New York Jets. So the Seattle Seahawks it's a very important one for them here, because once again, in addition to being tied with the New Orleans Saints for the 2nd best record in the NFC, they're only 1 game ahead of the Rams, and a win here could see them take the division for themselves, because the third place slot belongs to the Arizona Cardinals, and with 1 game left, it looks as though the Seahawks can most definitely put the division away and secure at least a top 4 spot in the division. And they're only 1 game behind the Packers, so they're still mathematically able to take the top spot in the NFC. And right now, out of the teams that are still in the hunt, sitting in 4th, you have the Washington football team sitting at 6-8. Following their loss against the Seattle Seahawks, the Washington football team, they are sitting at 6-8. They're currently 1 game ahead of the Cowboys and the Giants, who are currently 5-9, and they're 1.5 game ahead of the Eagles, who are still technically in it. And then looking at who the Washington football team is going to play this week, they face off against the Carolina Panthers at home, which kind of gave them the luck of the draw here. And a win here could possibly see the Philadelphia Eagles eliminated from the division. But the only thing that they're competing for is the 4th spot, because even if they were to fall out of the NFC East lead, I don't think they would be able to compete for a wild card spot necessarily. So of course, a win against the Carolina Panthers could prove incredibly important. Could be incredibly important for the Washington football team moving forward. Sitting in the 5th spot, you have the Los Angeles Rams sitting at 9-5 following their loss to the Jets. They're now 1 game behind the Seattle Seahawks in the division, but they currently sit atop the wild card with the same record as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but they own the tiebreaker in this scenario. And this week, the Los Angeles Rams will face off against the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle, as the Seahawks, with a win in Seattle, can clinch the division. With a win, the Rams can see themselves overtaking Seattle with the same record. So, of course, Week 16 is going to be very important for them. And as it stands, if the playoffs were to start today, they would have to face off against the Washington football team in the first round, which would probably be a pretty solid matchup for them if they want to get started early. Sitting in that 6th spot with the same record at 9-5, you have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are sitting 2nd in the NFC South following their comeback win against the Atlanta Falcons. And they are currently sitting 1 game ahead of the Arizona Cardinals, 2 games ahead of the Bears as it stands. A win here could see themselves clinching the playoffs as well. And going into this week, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to end up facing off against the Detroit Lions on Saturday at 1 o'clock on the day after Christmas. So that win could be very important for them. Like I just said, Tom Brady would clinch yet another playoffs. And this would be a very big blow to the Patriots, considering the Patriots had been eliminated for the first time since 2008 in their first season without Tom Brady. So, of course, it all kind of fits into the narrative, and the Buccaneers are playing incredibly well this season. If the playoffs were to start today, they would end up facing off against the Seattle Seahawks, and that's currently how it stands. Sitting in that 7th spot, the last team that's currently in are the 8-6 Arizona Cardinals, following their matchup and win against the Philadelphia Eagles. They are 3rd in the NFC West behind the Los Angeles Rams and the Seattle Seahawks. They are 3rd in the wild card, as they are 1 game behind the Buccaneers and the Rams, and they are 1 game ahead of the Bears. So a win here could see themselves move up. A win here could see themselves move up in the wild card, and a loss could possibly see them fall out of the playoff picture. As this week, the Arizona Cardinals will face off against their division rivals, the San Francisco 49ers at home. And the San Francisco 49ers, they could be spoilers this season, but the Arizona Cardinals are looking like a very solid team, and a win here could help them possibly secure a playoff spot. As it stands, if the playoffs were to start today, they would face off against the New Orleans Saints in the first round, and that's how it stands thus far. But right now, they're 1 game ahead of the Bears and 2 games ahead of the Vikings, who still believe that they're in it. And speaking of the teams that are on the bubble, there are currently 5 teams in the NFC that believe they still have a chance. Starting with the top, the first team on the outside looking in are the Chicago Bears, following their win against the Vikings. With 2 weeks left, they're only 1 game behind the Arizona Cardinals and 2 games behind the Rams and the Buccaneers. So, I mean, it is still very possible for the Chicago Bears to make the playoffs. This week, they're slated to play against the Jacksonville Jaguars in Jacksonville. So that could be a very easy win for them, as they could see themselves as following that game, they could just see themselves just waiting for a team to lose, waiting for an opportunity to jump right back in. And like I said, with 2 games left, only being 1 game out, is very possible for the Chicago Bears to make it. As for the team that they beat, the Minnesota Vikings, they are now sitting at 6-8. They are 2 games behind the Cardinals. They are still mathematically able to make it. If the Cardinals were to lose out, same with the Bears, the Vikings could see themselves jump right back into that picture. And following their loss to the Bears, the Minnesota Vikings, they are going to face off against the New Orleans Saints in New Orleans on Friday at 4:30. It'll be a very tough game for them to win, considering New Orleans is still fighting for a playoff spot, but it's still incredibly possible. And because they're still mathematically able to make the table, they are still a part of the NFC playoff picture moving forward. And also the next spot looking in, because the Bears and the Vikings are the only 2 teams that are fighting for a wild card spot. Now comes the remaining teams that are fighting for an NFC East playoff spot, because the Washington football team is sitting first in the NFC East with a 6-8 record. The only way that the Cowboys, Giants, and Eagles could possibly make it into the playoffs is if they win their division. So sitting 1 game behind the Washington football team, you have the Cowboys and the Giants both sitting at 5-9, and a win could be very important to them here. So like I just said, for the Washington football team, they have to play against the Carolina Panthers. The New York Giants are going to have to go to Baltimore to face off against the Ravens, who are still fighting for an AFC playoff spot, who are they're sitting on the outside looking in. And the Dallas Cowboys will face off against the Philadelphia Eagles at 4:25, which takes care of the Eagles. And because the Eagles are a game and a half out from the playoff division title, with 2 games left, the Eagles are still mathematically able to compete for the same spot. So that's how the NFC East is looking, and as it stands, that's how and just looking at how the NFC looks as of right now, you have the Packers, Saints, Seahawks, Washington football team, LA Rams, Buccaneers, and Cardinals. Those are the teams that are currently sitting in the playoff picture, and they need to win in order to stay in, because if they lose, they could see themselves possibly fall out, except with the exception of the Packers, Saints, and Seahawks. And then on the bubble, you have the Bears and the Vikings that are fighting for that last wild card spot. And then you have the Cowboys, Giants, and Eagles still competing for the NFC East. That entire division is up for grabs with 2 weeks left. And with that said, I'm going to keep everyone updated. And following Week 16's matchups, I will give an updated playoff picture with 1 week to go. But as it stands, this is how the NFL looks on December 22nd, 2020, out here in this quarantine. I'm James Sims. I want to thank you once again for listening to all 17, 18 minutes of this piece. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you next time. Peace out.